Yo, what's up? All right, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm here all by my lonesome. It's pretty sad, actually. Hey, so I got a solution. I have a solution. Well, I had Glenn R.J. Olette on the show last week, and he was talking about the problems with the public restrooms down in the in Veterans Park. And the issue is it's basically illegal to videotape inside the restroom because it's people's privacy. But people are going in there. For some reason, there are people that are so either bored or out of their minds that they find entertainment in destroying public restrooms. So that the aldermen and the mayor have basically shut them down. They're still getting money for it in the budget, but they shut them down. So people that need to use the restrooms, if they're waiting for the bus or whatever, can't use the restrooms, and it's caused quite a problem. So I think I have a reasonable solution, and that would be to set up sensors in the restroom so that if there's somebody in the restroom, no videotape is being taken, but as soon as the restroom is cleared, it videotapes the restroom to see the condition of the restroom, and there's a videotape outside the restroom taking pictures of people who come in and out. So if somebody goes in there and trashes it, you would actually have a videotape of it having been trashed and a videotape of them coming out of the restroom, which I think, if you prosecuted people, maybe people would be less apt to do it. Because the problem with society, one of the largest problems we have, we were talking about that yesterday in the Judiciary Committee, or at least I was talking about it, is accountability. The reason there are judges in the state that abuse their position is because they aren't accountable. The only people they are accountable to are the judiciary. So the judiciary, which is what they typically do, it's kind of human nature. If you're part of a group, the group tends to protect you. They protect each other. So there's no accountability. The reason you have police aren't inherently bad or good. They're just doing their job. But if there's no accountability, a bad cop is going to ruin the reputation of the police force, but also it will invite more bad behavior. And we have the same condition in New Hampshire with the Attorney General's office, which basically act like an extension of the police force. So there's really no accountability, and that's why we end up with things getting out of hand. It was the same thing that devastated the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, having one or two bad priests, is human nature. You're going to end up with that. But the fact of the matter is there was never accountability. And as long as there isn't accountability, there will be somebody somewhere that will abuse that opportunity, so to speak. Most normal people would not consider it an opportunity, but if, we come in various degrees of derangement. So anyway, that was my thought about the restrooms, because it really is totally unreasonable not to have a restroom down there for people to use, and it is really unreasonable that people abuse that privilege to and ruin it for everybody else. But anyway, enough about restrooms. What I wanted to talk about, John Heichel's supposed to join me any minute, and I guess we'll go. Oh, let's see. What do I want to talk about? I was trying to hold off on talking about serious stuff till John gets here, but one of the things I wanted to touch on is Trump. What's Trump's I forget Trump's wife's name. Anyway, the First Lady, Melania. Thank you. I never commented on this show or on Facebook. I don't remember ever commenting on Michelle Obama's appearance because I don't think it's relevant. I get how some people do, but it's not important. It really is not important. And but I'm only going to comment on this in regards to, if you don't believe that the news media is jaded, I think this will kind of drive home how jaded it really is. When Michelle Obama took office, news reporters, The View, it didn't matter what program you listened to on mainstream, the propaganda radio, or wherever it was, there were always comments about how beautiful she was. Why that's particularly relevant, I don't know. But they were almost, it was almost like methinks thou protest too much, and like they were trying to convince themselves how beautiful she was, or convince you how beautiful she was. But it was a big topic, and it was all over the place, and there are always, pictures of her in her great new dress or whatever it is. And like I said, I never commented because it's not relevant. But now that Trump's taken over, he's married to probably one of the most beautiful women in the world. I think that's a pretty reasonable statement. And they're just falling all over themselves trying to figure out ways to insult her. The other day it was I don't know, I guess she wore high heels when she got off the plane and down in Texas or something. It was like stupid crap. And it's just constant. And I think that is indicative of what's going on. It doesn't matter what Trump does or doesn't do. They attack him. It's a constant, relentless attack. I mean, if you look over the last year, picture, if you're going to be objective, try to picture this happening when in 2008 after Obama won. First thing they do is they're shocked that anybody could beat Hillary. They're shocked that Trump could beat Hillary. So there's a shock of the news media. If you watched, I watched it till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I watched the change in the attitudes of the newscasters. At first, they were almost giddy at 7 o'clock at night because they were going to end up with Hillary Clinton as president. Then by the end of the night, they were all destitute and sad, and I think it was I forget the news reporter who you said this. This is you're not. This isn't a nightmare. This is reality, and all this other garbage. So they go from total elation because they are absolutely positive that Hillary's going to win to total devastation because she lost. And personally, I believe that a percentage of that disappointment or shock was that I used to listen to a guy named Jay Severin out of Boston, and he used to work on presidential campaigns. And Jay used to say, this is back, and he got kicked off the air because he said some pretty inappropriate crap. And Jay used to say that you need a 5% to go above and beyond what the Democrats get, about 5%, just to get beyond the voter fraud factor. It was well known in the industry that there was voter fraud, and it always favored the Democrats. And it was proven out later on. A little bit of it was proven out. And I think one reason that the news people, the Democrats, and everybody was so shocked, and the reason Hillary didn't campaign very hard near the end, was by virtue of the fact that she knew she had it in the bag because the voter fraud that she was aware of was going to pull her over the top. And it wasn't enough. And that's what happened in the election. So anyways, we go from the election where everybody's shocked and crying and sad and destitute and jumping off buildings, and Hollywood actors and actresses who didn't leave the country even though they promised they would. So then the next thing was, I might have the sequence incorrectly, but the next thing was they convinced Jill Stein to do a recount. And they had to do that because Hillary went to great lengths to explain how Trump was not a good person, or he was threatening the security of this country if he even thought of questioning the election results. And so she kind of painted herself into a corner, so they conned Jill Stein into doing it. And it was in I believe it was Ohio, they started doing the recount. And if I remember this correctly, this is what happened. They went and did the recount in Detroit. And in Detroit, to simplify this, in Detroit you might have 1,000 registered voters or people who same day registered or whatever, a total of 1,000 people registered to vote who could legally vote theoretically in that district. When they did the recounts, they would find 1,100 votes, obviously for Hillary. And so the result of that, when they found the fraud or the mistake, quote unquote, the law was set up so that if there is a dispute between the vote count, what the original vote count and the recount, the original stands as to be the actual number. So in effect, it encourages, we talk about accountability, the law in regards to Detroit encourages voter fraud. It's set up for voter fraud. But anyway, so you had the recounts that weren't panning out because the only fraud they were actually finding out about was favored Hillary. So we have the recounts, that kind of failed. Then, and I've never seen this, I've been, reasonably aware of politics for a long time. I have never seen the next thing that happened, which was a concerted effort to try to talk electors into changing the vote in the Electoral College. Because as you know from back then, it's the Electoral College that technically votes in the president. And I've never seen them try to sway them or con them or threaten. They were being threatened. I don't understand why people weren't arrested for threatening electors to vote against what they're supposed to do. But that was completely unheard of. Then it went immediately into the vote didn't count because of the popular vote, that theoretically Hillary won the popular vote. I really don't think she actually did. I know that on paper she did, but I do know that I remember Obama directly appealing to people and explaining that if an illegal alien were to vote in the election, there really is no consequences because that's a private thing and there's really nobody that's going to investigate it. So he was actually encouraging voter fraud just prior to the election. So whether or not, because in California, which if you look at the states that gave her theoretically the majority vote or the popular vote, if you want to call it that, it was only L.A. I think L.A. and New York City, or California and New York, pushed her over the top as far as quote unquote popular vote. So anyway, so they started trying to delegitimize his election because of what I call a rigged popular vote theory. And the other thing you have to understand, it's not the people that vote for president, it's the states. It is the United States of America, not the United People of America. And it's the states that determine who becomes president, not the general public. And the reason they do that, if it was just a popular vote, the reason they did that and why it's etched into the Constitution is because if it was just popular vote, there would not be candidates coming to New Hampshire because there's not enough people here. The only place candidates would go would be L.A., New York, parts of Texas, parts of Florida, and that would be it because that's where all the votes are. So this idea of a popular vote is a total load. And the thing you have to understand is if we ever went to a popular vote, and the reason they would want to go to a national popular vote is because the Democrats would win forever. There would never be, the conservative states around this country would never be represented again in Washington as for the presidency. So that was a total load of BS. And then they went into, after that attack, they went into the Russian connection, like he was. I think the foundation for that was something he said back in the campaign, where he just made an offhand comment about, I hope Putin does have something on her or something like that. Just he was just making a stupid off the cuff comment, and so they just latched onto that. And I read recently that part of that was there was research done in 2015 for Hillary, and they determined that one of Hillary's largest weaknesses was her close affiliation with Russia. In case you don't know, she had, when she was Secretary of State, Bill Clinton went over to Russia to speak and was paid $500,000 to speak at a Russian event. And shortly thereafter, Hillary okayed the sale of 20% of the United States uranium interest to a Russian company. I believe John Podesta, her campaign manager, also had money invested in that company. So there was a lot of very good evidence to infer that she was way too cozy with the Russians. And when they did the research, they found out that was her greatest weakness. And what people do, a pretty reasonably effective tactic politically, is to try to attack your opponent with what you're guilty of, so that if they try to turn it back on you, it sounds like you're just playing tit for tat. And that's what they did. And that whole Russian thing was another. I've never seen any evidence of collusion at all. It's just fabricated, trying to diminish Trump. It's just constant. It's relentless, and to me, the Democrats are in effect not. I don't mean regular Democrats. There's a lot of Democrats in the State House that I get along with great, and a lot of but the inside the Beltway, call it, Democrats are trying to divide and destroy this country. It really seems like that to me, because they're relentless. They're not letting the guy do anything that without insulting him, like his most recent thing about DACA. If you listen to I don't like listening to him too much, but I listen to Sean Hannity. I don't like listening to him too much because when he has guests on, they talk over each other all the time, so you don't really actually get any information. You just hear people yell at each other, which really is not informative or entertaining to me. But they did, on his show today, did a great montage of his people working for him. Are pretty awesome. Of all the newscasters, comedians, and people around the country, notable people around the country, who referred to his decision yesterday to end the DREAM Act as cruel. So it's like a memo goes out to all of them all at once. Make sure you harp on the word cruel in regards to Trump for the next 24 hours or 48 hours, however long this we want to run with this, And so anyway, President Trump announced yesterday that he's going to stop the DREAM Act in 6 months. Excuse me. So he's going to stop the DREAM Act in 6 months. So what is that? When President Obama was a senator, I think it was just before he was running for office, or maybe when he was running, he said that this is a nation of laws, and we have borders, and it's absolutely necessary that those borders have integrity, and that people coming here come here legally, because people coming here illegally is a detriment to the people who are here legally, or the citizens of the United States, because there's jobs out there that are filled by people who are coming here illegally. Roofing. Everybody assumes it's just picking vegetables and stuff like that in California, but that's really not true. Roofing companies, painting companies, all kinds of companies will hire illegal aliens because they don't have to pay them very much, you know. And so anyway, so that was Obama back in around 2008 talking about the absolute necessity to have strong borders. Hey,
Gary.
my hero.
Yeah, boy, I just swam in and
You swam in, yeah. You get the kayak out, and
yeah, soaking wet.
I was just talking about DACA.
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 Yes.
And so anyway, so in 2008, Obama said the absolute necessity to have strong borders and to let people in legally and maybe work visas and things like that if you want them in. So, but it's got to be regulated. After he's elected around 2005, 2006, he's pandering to the liberal base and says, well, you know, I'm only president. I can't do anything. If it was up to me, I'd let everybody in. By 2000, was it 5 or 6? 5 or 6, he knew he was on his way out, and he didn't have to run for election again. So he introduced the DREAM Act by what is it? What do you call it when the president does a executive order? He had already acknowledged that was the constitutionally. He said we are a nation of laws, and I can't do anything. But when he signed the DREAM Act, he said, well, what the heck, you know, I don't have to run for office again, so I'll do what I want. And he, in effect, wrote a law. Well, if you know anything about basic U.S. history, or, you know, Congress is the one who writes laws, not the president. So we end up at a point where Obama lets in dreamers. They were coming up in trains from South America. People may not understand that this was an organized movement to ship, you know, 750,000 people from South America into the United States and process them and allow them to, you know, live off welfare for a while. And they were not children. They were some children, but the median age of the people, the 750,000 people that came up here, was 25. So this image of a 4-year-old in diapers coming up to the United States by himself is propaganda. So he wrote into law, in effect tried to write into law. He can't, so it wasn't really a law. Because he believed Congress wanted to do it, or that's what he said. So now President Trump says, look, and this is the other thing. They keep saying Trump's like, you know, Hitler, like he's trying to pull in all this power. But if you look at what he just did yesterday, that's proof that he's actually saying, no, this isn't my job. I'm giving it back to Congress. He says, we're going to extend this for 6 months. Congress has 6 months to write a law and get it on my desk. And if they care that much about making sure the dreamers stay here, that's up to them, not me. I'm the president, not the king.
That's right.
But now he's cruel.
Oh, of course.
He's
He's never going to get any slack.
No.
No one's going to cut him a break, period. I think he did the right thing.
He did.
Absolutely.
He did.
And it is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
He knows what it is, and of course, he's the greatest president we've ever had. So we're gonna find out just exactly what kind of leader
is that your
he is.
objective opinion?
Yes, it's my unbiased opinion.
Your unbiased opinion. Yeah, it's just.
What other laws can we? You know, I don't particularly think there are a lot of laws that we probably shouldn't be enforcing. So
Right.
if we can, you know, if we are a land of laws, isn't it just natural that every law that we have on the books should be enforced? And if they aren't, then what other laws should we not enforce at the risk of sending some of our fellow Americans to prison or worse?
This to me is worse than that, because not enforcing a law or ignoring a law is not right. That's not constitutional because
It's illegal
it's illegal.
to not enforce
But
it.
to actually start writing your own,
It's a felony not to enforce something once you.
to me, writing a president of the United States writing a law that Congress couldn't do is
Congress is controlled by corporations and big money and
Yep.
and lobbies and everything else. These guys just want to get reelected.
yeah, that's it.
That's it. And they've sold us all out over the last 80 years, and the price that we've paid are in our votes.
Exactly.
And it's a shame that this is where it's at, but we've got a great leader who's telling Congress, this is in your lap. You want to get reelected? I don't really care. You got to do a good job.
Right,
You got to
right.
do the right thing.
You got to do your
And
job.
he's putting all their, he's putting all them on the spot to, or get off the pot.
Oh yeah, I know. I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Right.
But I was listening to, I was telling them before you walked in, I was listening to Hannity, and the people who do his show do a really great job with their montages,
Right.
audio clips.
Right.
And it's just great. There's like 20-something different people, from comedians to news people to writers, everybody. And they're all using the word cruel.
Right. Cruel. Right.
Cruel. It's like they get a memo. Everybody, make sure you use this word this week.
Right.
Trump cruel.
Right. Cruel.
Right? Cruel.
Racist.
Racist.
White supremacists.
White supremacist.
All of the things that I think are giving President Trump more strength and more ammunition to be victorious.
I think so too,
2020.
because if you looked at, because as everybody knows, in the last month, they've tried to convince the news people and everybody else have tried to convince the American people that Trump is a racist, and he's a Nazi or whatever.
Now they're saying we are. Now they're
No,
saying
yeah, we are.
Now
Yeah.
we are because we happen to like him or we happen to be.
And to further the narrative, this is the chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. You've seen him on Bob's show, who comes on after here. Okay, his name is Ray Buckley, if you don't know. This is his tweet. I think it was yesterday or the day before.
You can look him up on YouTube if you haven't.
3rd of September. 3rd of September.
There's some decent videos.
Note Sununu, New Hampshire GOP, and billionaire Koch brothers and AFP New Hampshire rush to support effort to engage white supremacists into voting in New Hampshire. Okay, so what he's referring to is an effort of, I forget which group, there's a new group that's trying to motivate basically Trump-type supporters or Trump supporters to get more involved. It's the same thing the Democrats do when they try to get people involved in elections. It's nothing different than that.
Or people off grid who haven't voted in a long time. They
Right.
happen to live in rural areas that aren't up on the news or anything, and they just don't think government's working for them. So
They
they're not
don't
gonna-
think there's
they're
any
not-
point
they
to
don't think
voting
there's any
anymore.
point in voting.
Right.
And
the-
they're pretty much right.
Yeah.
The way things go, they're right. So this
yeah,
group
you can see what
is
the-
going
the-
after them, and Ray Buckley thinks that they're white supremacists and Nazis and whatever else.
But I just want to point out the Democrats do this themselves. They try to motivate.
Let's see if I can find that name.
They try to motivate people to get out that haven't been involved and stuff like
Right.
that. That's actually one of the things that got Obama elected. Was they did a really good job of reaching out to people that had never voted before, and they told them that the Republicans were going to kill their unborn and use their bodies for Soylent Green. But anyway, so what this new group is doing is just trying to motivate people to get involved. And Ray Buckley believes that anybody that supports Trump or anything like him, it must be a white supremacist. So I guess you and I are white supremacists.
I guess we are.
We must be. Ray said it.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, Ray.
Personally, the only colored people I know are actually the ones with tattoos, and I think they're pretty cool too.
What color are they?
There are many colors. You get red, green, blue, rainbow, anything. All kinds of tattoos. I always wanted to get a Yosemite Sam tattoo, but I think it might be a little bit too intimidating for people.
It could be, especially with the gun.
Oh yeah, oh
Like
yeah,
two
the
guns.
gun. Oh yeah, he's got two guns.
You might
That's
have
right.
two guns. You might not. They won't allow you. Maybe
They probably kick me right out of a school.
they won't let you fly. They'll probably
Yeah, they'll probably have me
they'll
arrested.
kick you out of school.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, that's where we're at. We're basically, everybody that doesn't agree with the Democratic Party and the news media is a racist.
Right.
You know?
They have had this plan in progress for the past since 1933, if not before.
Okay.
I mean,
Explain
there
yourself.
was a huge communist party here, you know.
Yes.
Back, and it still is. They're just kind of sleeping. I don't know where they are, but they're here. They're still here. Anyone thinks Nazis and communists are gone because time got rid of them, I think they're wrong. They're here, and they're among us. But we don't know who they are, and they've laid kind of dormant for several years because they didn't really have anybody to work with. We're gonna. I think this is a great time in American history for two things. One reason is we are all becoming more involved in the process of our government, and it's going to go one way or the other. But the great thing is I think we're going to get rid of one particular group that controls everything and one that doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's actually what the real deal is as far as why Trump's being attacked by the Democrats and the media and not supported by the Republicans in D.C. is because they're all part of the swamp. They've been making money off the taxpayers.
On both sides.
Both sides.
Both sides.
Yeah.
It's all the swamp.
It's all the
Trump
swamp.
recognized it. He was talking about in the beginning, and he got everybody behind him that wasn't part of that swamp, that knew there was a problem. You know, you feel this is just not right, but we don't have a voice.
Right.
Because our vote literally almost never counted.
No, because you elect, basically.
They were already bought.
Yeah, you were basically electing different members of the swamp.
Right. And
You
they
know?
know, and he knew it, and that's what attracted everybody to come after and back him up.
Yeah.
They're not going away. The swamp's still there.
The swamp-
And I think Trump's support is gaining strength at this point.
Yeah, I think so
I
because
think it's gonna
people know, Americans know they aren't racist. That's all stupid. Oh, so
We're not.
so
We're not
the
racist.
so that you understand the percentages here, they want to make. There are only 8,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan in the United States currently. There used to be 4 or 8 million, I forget how many million. Millions and millions of members of the Ku Klux Klan. There's only 8,000 of them. So
And they were strong throughout the Northeast, by the way.
they were. This
That's
is
why our Catholic church in my little town in central Maine that I grew up in was out in the boonies compared to the other churches that were right in the downtown
Right.
area. And there was a strong Ku Klux Klan influence in the North. Who
Oh,
knew
there
it?
was. I know.
But there certainly was.
There was a really cool article.
They didn't like Catholics. They didn't like anybody.
I was up at Acadia.
Yeah.
For a few days, and there was a newspaper article about the Ku Klux Klan in Acadia,
Right.
and they started, and first thing they were supposed to do was hate Jews,
Right.
and there was only one Jewish guy in the whole town, and everybody liked him. So they said, okay, well, I guess we can't really go there. And then the other thing they were supposed to do is really hate the Catholics, and they realized that half their friends were Catholic, so they kind of it just died because it was ridiculous. But anyway, so the idea that the Ku Klux Klan is even a real threat is they're just using it to build up a case against Trump. It is total BS. There aren't many, if any, Ku Klux Klan members nationwide. Out of 350 million, there's 4,000, right? I said
Yeah, but
8,000,
I don't think we can say that the racism is gone.
No.
Honestly, I don't think it will ever go away.
No,
I think it's probably it's always one team against another. To be honest,
Exactly.
I think there's a competitive spirit in mankind. Period.
Yes.
It's a nasty one, but I think it's always going to be here. But I think the number one thing, if we want to all come together, is stop putting our country of origin from our grandparents or family first, and then Americans second. I think we
Correct.
should be Americans of such and such descent.
yeah.
Or we should be Americans first. But until we start saying this and calling ourselves that, everybody's we're whatever American. And I think we keep putting American second, and that dilutes the strength and the feeling of what it's like to be American. We're always trying to be part of a group that somebody before us came from,
Right.
and we're not. We're
We're not.
Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, I identify myself as being Irish because I have Irish heritage, but I'm not. I wouldn't have anything idea what to do if I ever
I'm
went
American.
to
I've
Ireland.
had people ask me, "What are you?" And I go, "American."
Right.
What
pretty
am
much.
I?
What else am I? What I've been? Yeah.
What am I?
The other thing, the Ku Klux Klan is a joke. The Nazi party, I couldn't find any good information as to how many there are, but there's very few. When they have these protests, it's like 20 of them show up, or something like that. But if you watch the news media, they'll make sure that you get a view so it looks like there's hundreds, but it's not true.
I think the Communist Party has a pretty good foothold.
Well, that's just it. That's what I'm getting to. So you've got
Progressives, for instance. The Progressives were the Communist Party in 1960.
they redefine themselves.
Yeah, they redefined themselves.
So you have the Nazi Party and the Ku Klux Klan, which is supposed to be the big evil things that Trump is quote unquote affiliated with, which is not true. He's denounced that plenty of times. Just they just keep pinning it on him anyway because that's what they do. But the real issue is Antifa. Antifa was the genesis of Antifa was 1932 Germany, and it was after the Germans outlawed the Communist Party in Germany.
Correct.
And Antifa took anti-fascist, which is kind of ridiculous. That's where it started, and it kind of dwindled away, and then they brought it back. If you look at the Antifa flag and the original German Antifa flag, they're pretty much identical. And it is a communist party. Now, if you're going to compare, like most people, if they see a Nazi flag or a Nazi symbol anywhere, it kind of upsets them because they know what that represents. Well, if you see a hammer and sickle, you should be 10 times more offended and bothered.
Right.
Adolf Hitler killed about 6 million people, innocent, his own citizens, in World War II. That hammer and sickle, the communists, killed about 100,000 of their own people. Communism combined with atheism means that the big difference is communism puts the state first. Everything else is subject to the state. The most important thing is the state, right? Our country is supposed to be, you wouldn't know it by watching The Swamp, is supposed to be the individual trumps the state.
Right.
Okay? And that's the huge flip-flop. And Antifa is communist. And a lot of these, the extreme Democrats, the progressives, are communists. They'll call themselves socialists, but they're just socialists until they can get communism in place.
And they're calling us fascist. They're calling us. They're calling anybody that's not them fascist. The fact is that they are the fascists.
Yes.
They're coming after us, and they're using a psychology that works and has worked in many different countries and government and leaders, is to actually, whatever you are, call the other side that.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets people behind you. They don't know what you're talking about, but then they start attacking that other group as something that's bad, and it pulls the whole thing into their favor.
Yeah, I was actually listening.
We know who the real fascists are.
It's actually true. If you look at the definition for fascism, it's actually changed over the last 20 years. Fascism used to be a left wing, because fascism, like in Mussolini, a fascist state was a state that was strictly controlled by force, and the government controlled. They didn't control the companies, but they made sure that the companies produced what they wanted. So they had basically total control of the country. It was just shy of communism. So if there's a left and a right continuum, and absolute control by the state is communism, and that's the left, and our Constitution is all the way to the right, or should have, was originally intended to be, where the people have absolute power over the government. That's the left and right, and fascism is wicked far over to the left.
Far over
but
the
if
left.
you go over
Here's
to
the
Google,
definition of it, for instance.
that's the new definition, though, right?
Well,
It'll say right wing.
This one says fascism is a form of radical authoritarian nationalism
Yeah.
characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and control of industry and commerce that came to prominence in the earlier 20th century Europe.
Okay, now go to Google. Try just a Google search, just what Google says about fascism.
Wikipedia?
No, Google.
Google.
Go to Google
Okay.
and just type in fascism. See what it'll have.
I did.
Let me see.
Fascism for dummies?
No, just just type in
I'd
fascism.
like to see what fascism
It'll have like just
fascism for
it'll have
dummies
just
is.
the definition quickly. It won't have no links.
Well, that's the definition. It comes up with that one.
It does now.
Yeah.
That's not what it used to say a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago, it talked about right wing.
Google must be fascist, and they don't want you to know what it is.
They don't want to know, yeah.
They don't want to tell you.
But there was a lot of the newer dictionaries say fascism is
What
a
does
right wing.
fascism mean in simple terms? A governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism.
Right.
This is what the opposition to Trump is doing.
Yes.
They're making people that don't have any idea what it really is think that Trump's side is that, but
Right.
Trump's side is not that.
Yeah, but if you look back in the election, the people that were fascist during the election,
The ones breaking the windows and marching around in
Well,
black
before that-
outfits with face.
that was Antifa.
Yeah, exactly.
But even before that, the fascists were, and I don't understand why nobody was arrested for this, but they were, the guy who organized it went to the White House, I don't know how many, like 100 times talking, and 30 of it or 20 of it talking to Obama directly. The guy who organized it, what he did was he would pay people that were mentally, say, unstable or whatever, a reasonable amount of money to go to Trump rallies to start fights.
And they do.
And they did.
They do.
And they still do.
They pay. You look at these organized fighting groups that show up at cities around the country. It's either very, very, very well organized communist group, or they're getting paid.
Right.
And I got a feeling they're getting paid.
I think it's both.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
So communists do take money.
Yeah, they do. They do. They're capitalists. If they get paid enough, they'll be communists.
Right. Capital communists.
But you saw that yesterday.
They're
it's
mixed
like
up.
it's like there was an entire protest, ready, willing, and at the White House after he announced DACA.
Right.
Well, how do they get
They're
that?
ready.
Or they're like sitting in bunkers somewhere, getting drinking coffee. Let's go.
It's like the insiders, the leakers are telling them, "Hey, show up because this is what's going to happen."
Exactly.
Nobody's surprised anymore.
No, it's a scam. But the thing you have to, that's why I like doing this show, is to let people know what's going on. Because if you look at the Civil War, how many hundreds of thousands of Americans died in the Civil War? A lot, right?
A lot of hundreds.
Did you know that most of the people fighting for the South, 90% of them never had slaves? You know what they were fighting for? Because they were told they were defending their state from the North. They weren't really fighting to support slavery. They didn't even know it. They were going up there because somebody said, "Hey, we're getting in a fight with the North, and we got to defend Virginia. We got to defend Georgia. We got to, this is our homeland. We're going to defend it." They didn't know what they were fighting for.
I would bet most people don't know what they're fighting for.
Right.
And it's.
And that's just
But
it.
again, humans have that nature to follow a leader, and once the battle cry and the battle, and the battle song has been sung,
Yeah, exactly. It's I
people
think
follow.
they do. Everybody does. It's like when you see these at concerts, when we were kids going to concerts, people get riled up and do wicked, stupid stuff that they wouldn't do
Right.
anywhere else. It's this group think where they just they just follow the group to do whatever the group was doing,
Right. Look-
regardless of how atrocious it is.
Right. Imagine riots after a Super Bowl game, flipping over cars and
Right.
burning things and breaking windows. This is what people do.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the
not
whole
normal
trick is to
people.
teach people, learn yourself how to keep a level head and not become part of a group just because everybody else is.
right,
You know,
right. But we need groups.
we need groups.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need groups because we got.
So anyway, so I was going to talk about DACA. What else was I going to talk about? What else? What other cool things? Oh,
Well, we touched on Ray Buckley, and that was.
Ray.
But look him
Buckley.
up on YouTube. Anybody wants to know Ray Buckley, if you don't know him, he's a pretty involved guy. He's been around a long time. So if you have any questions about who he is, he's got some great videos on YouTube.
He's got. Some,
And that's all I'll say on that.
that's all you'll say. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
What was it? What else going on in the news?
I think he's a lawyer too, right? He's an attorney.
I have no idea.
I think he is an attorney. So.
I did. There's one of the most wonderful state representatives to ever serve for Manchester was Paul Bissard. Okay, I met Paul through Emile Bulio, the former mayor,
Yeah.
and who was another just wonderful guy. And anyway, so Paul was one of the people who in 2003 or 4 had a bill to define marriages between a man and a woman. Is that he went up to Concord. You gotta see this the evolution of him was really, really interesting. He went up there because he is a union guy. He believes in protecting the blue collar workers. Dyed in the wool traditional Democrat. Okay. He goes up, and within 6 months, I'm talking to him. He says, "I think the party left me because it was so radically left." And that was 15 years ago.
Oh yeah.
It's so radically left. He says, "I think the party left me." But anyway, he's a good guy, good moral guy, Christian. He should be the poster child for Christians.
Right.
Because he did all the soup kitchens, he did this, he was a firefighter trying to save little kids. He, did stuff for the community. He ran for state rep because he thought it was a good thing for the community. I mean, the guy he walks the walk. He not only calls himself a Christian, he represents Christ well. He's just a wonderful guy. So anyway, but he's very kind of soft-spoken and really kind guy. And he had this bill to redefine marriages between a man, or to define marriages between a man and a woman. And I was standing in the back of the representatives' hall with him, next to him, and this reporter goes over to talk to Ray Buckley. And I heard him say he was from the Times. So he goes over, he's interviewing Ray, and then he comes by me, and because I'm a pain in the butt, I said, you're a reporter, right? And he goes, yeah. So you want to hear both sides of this debate, I presume. He goes, well, yes, I do, which he really didn't, but he says, yes, I do. So I said, well, this is Ray Buckley. He's a state legislator from Manchester who is a co-sponsor of this bill. You probably should talk to him if you want to hear the other side. And then he introduces himself as so-and-so from the Gay Times of Boston. I threw him right under the bus. I didn't mean to, but I just looked over at Paul, and he's got these deer in the headlights. It was awesome. It was probably one of the meanest things I've ever done, and I'm pretty proud of it, even though I didn't mean to. But he's a wicked nice guy, and I don't know why that came up in my head. Oh, Ray Buckley. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, Ray's been causing trouble up there for a long time. Problem is, he's a pretty smart guy, but he is to call everybody that disagrees with you racist is pretty ridiculous.
White supremacist.
White supremacist, yeah.
It's everybody that doesn't agree with him is evil.
Well, I think he's mainly referring to Trump supporters, but not everybody. But Yeah, basically, if,
If you don't agree with him, you're evil.
yeah, you've got to
I
be,
think that's
obviously, you have to be.
That's
'cause-
how I interpreted what he's saying.
Right. I think that's, it's ridiculous. So what else is going on in the news? We have the
Hurricane
hurricane,
Irma.
Irma,
I mean,
which
we got
is,
Jose right after
Jose,
Jose.
and the news media, I think, is trying to paint that as part of global warming or global,
Trump did it. It's Trump's fault.
it's Trump's fault.
Right.
Because in 2000, we haven't actually had a real hurricane to hit the United States since 2008 up until last week,
Right.
right? And it's global warming or climate change.
We got some hurricanes coming across the ocean. I mean, this is hurricane season, right? So,
The fact that we've avoided them for this many years is actually kind of unusual,
yeah, well,
you know?
the Earth, yeah, maybe somebody's.
I heard a really cool explanation from a climate scientist, and he was talking about, because and I don't know enough about it to speak that intelligently about it, but he's talking about the people that claim that the Earth's temperature going up, and it really hasn't gone up, going up will heat the oceans, right? And that's what causes the temperatures to rise, and that's why we have hurricanes and things. And the scientist said that is so much BS, and it's easily provable how much BS it is. He says if you take an ice cube, if you go home right now, take a nice styrofoam Dunkin' Donuts cup, and tip one upside down and put an ice cube on top of it. Then take the same cup, fill it with room temperature water, and put the ice cube in that. What happens? Which one melts first? The one in the water melts really quickly. The one sitting there in the air will take, I don't know how long to melt, but quite a while, because air doesn't transfer its energy to water that easily.
It's less dense.
It's not dense enough to actually transfer the energy or the energy into the water. And the ocean water is so massive, it's so deep, it's such a huge quantity that it would take forever to warm the oceans because the air got a little bit hotter. It just doesn't happen. It's not accurate. It's not true. But anyway, yeah. So now hurricanes are Trump's fault. You know, somebody was pointing out out in the other room that I think it was Norm was talking to me about the how it's all Trump's fault because of the hurricanes, and his wife is guilty because she wore high heels. They're all evil people, obviously.
Terrible fascist state.
Terrible fascist racists. And he's actually donated $1 million to the cleanup.
Right.
How much did Obama donate so far? Nothing.
Zero.
Nothing.
He took it instead.
Yeah. How much did Hillary Clinton?
I think she raised.
Well, they got the Hillary Clinton Foundation, which isn't theoretically, it's supposed to be charitable.
Right.
How much did they?
To her charity, for her.
Yeah, well, I know that,
her and Bill's charity.
but theoretically, it was supposed to be a.
Well, most charities are supposed to be charitable.
Yes. Yeah. So they've. It's just insane. It's insane out there. You know, the really cool thing is, I don't think of Trump supporters. I don't think he's losing any.
I don't think he's losing any
I
support.
think he's gaining any.
Yeah,
Gaining.
I mean, they'll tell you that you're a fascist. They'll tell you that Trump's losing support, and I don't think so. I think people are seeing right through all this crap, and they're just gonna come out in hordes to get him reelected. He's gonna do such an awesome job over the next.
Well, I don't think I was listening. Oh, that's what I wanted to say before I forget. If you guys want to listen to a really cool video, really, it's like I said, I don't really listen to Sean Hannity because all he got is people yelling at each other, so you can't really learn anything by that. I really like programs where you actually learn stuff. And this guy's name is Dave Rubin. If you look up on YouTube, look up Dave Rubin talking to Milo Yiannopoulos. It's an awesome video because they actually make some really cool points. Dave is gay, and he used to be a diehard Democrat, but he's kind of shifting more libertarian now because of what the Democrats are doing. Because he's a free speech guy, and the Democrats now, like Ray Buckley, obviously, and a bunch of others, are anti-free speech, which is
Absolutely.
sad. Which
Yeah,
is
well, they're fascist.
yeah, I know.
Right.
Hey,
And, you know, I mean, it's something when the Democrats are mad at the Russians for not being communist enough. Right?
exactly.
They're
That is
really, they're upset. They don't believe the Russians are communist enough.
right.
And
Well,
it's kind of funny when
they got to work on that.
Yeah, they got to work on that.
Yeah, well, they should write a bill telling Putin to, step up his game.
Be
You
more
know,
communist or get off the pot.
exactly. Hey, we got to go. We'll see you guys next week.
Have a great day.